Today is Tuesday, January 29th, 2013. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm still Steve Stanley.
Hey, and I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. This is episode 188.
Oh, my word.
Yes, it is.
You know, there are things that
0.7.
people who aren't watching live get to see the post-production of the show, and so Matthew cleans it up. So, so only the live viewers got to see the opening today. All three of them.
Yes.
all three of them.
Oh my word!
All right, so
it's been a fun morning. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Last week it was fun getting set up. This week it was fun getting set up.
Yeah. I've been teaching at Flame this week, and so we have the main monitor, which is here at the house. So I took that with me, forgetting that we needed it here. And so, like, poor Matthew, it just put him in, he
Panic mode.
I'm in class, and I see this text, and I look at it, and all of a sudden I'm off subject matter, like, oh my word, we're in trouble.
What have I done?
Yeah. So we welcome Steve to studio today, filling in
with
for Master Heath.
Yeah, it's doing something pretty cool. Spiritual Emphasis Week this week at Southern Wesleyan, and Heath is leading that.
Yeah, heard some good comments too.
That's a
Ben.
really good choice. Really good choice.
Yeah.
Heath has a heart for youth and a way to connect them with God that's unique.
Yeah, good guy. All righty. Well, today we want to welcome to the show Kory Pence. Kory describes himself as a thinker and designer with a firm belief in simplicity and the power of stories. He loves to create collaborative environments where open thinking inspires great design, and he has led creative development in a variety of disciplines, including brand identity, brand strategy, publication design, and new media design. Kory especially has a passion for teaching and helping nonprofits communicate their vision. He received his Master of Fine Arts in Design from Marywood University in 2009, where his thesis focused on design for change through nonprofits and cause marketing. Kory loves to create atmospheres for authentic community. Kory, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, and that is a mouthful.
Yeah. And listen, I promise you that we've had others on this show where like their bios read like a novel, and I've had to trim them down, so... Yeah,
mine should just be trimmed down to I get paid to play with images and make things look cool.
Yeah, well, and you do a good job, and that's why we brought you on the show. A couple of years ago at our pastors' gathering in Orlando. Now Matthew here, the producer of the show, he has an eye for this kind of stuff, and it was one of the brochures. Was it the main one? And you were saying
No, it was
this?
the urban mission deal.
Yeah. Anyway, and he wanted to track down who produced this, who's behind it, and at the end of the day, we found out it was you. And over the last year, I've gotten to know you more and more, and so again, it's just a real privilege to have you on the show.
Well, privilege is mine. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, last week you and I had some good communication back and forth, where you made it clear that vision, mission, strategy is really your passion, and you provided me with some great feedback, some good bullets that I just want to turn back around and serve them to you as questions. I mean, you started your list by saying formation over information. So, what do you mean by that? And perhaps you could give us some examples of each.
Yeah. Well. We all know what information is because that's what we get every day. Those in the church world know that formation is something different, and that's hard to gauge and hard to measure sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's the same is true in communicating in church design, and when you focus too much on information, you can lose the formation piece. That is really the purpose for you being there. So I always try to start out, even in designing a website or a video, asking the question about formation. What is it that we're trying to achieve and have an outcome for? And yeah, there's going to be information involved in that process, but if you don't know your target, that formation piece to begin with, then you're going to miss it. So I have a passion for helping nonprofits really define their vision and mission. And it's some of the most painful, hardest work that an organization does.
What would let me interrupt you here. What would that process look like? So you come into, let's say, a church or a nonprofit organization. So what are I mean, some of the things you're going to run them through.
Yeah, I mean, I have like a 6-step process, but the real simple way about it is that we have a conversation. And if in that conversation, the pastor really can't articulate what their vision and mission is, then that's the first indicator that needs refined. So, it's really a casual conversation that I walk them through, asking about where do you hope to be in 5 years? What is the God thing that only He could accomplish? That's your vision. So that's kind of the beginning process of trying to figure out the vision and mission.
The next thing you say is define your mission, simplify the message, be consistent, be persistent. What's the central theme of those 4 directives?
Hard work.
Do you have another answer?
That's not the one we wanted to hear.
Yeah. I mean, but it really is. I mean, it takes a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, and willingness to really stick at it. Simplifying your message. I have a great example. The Ransom Church.
Yeah.
In Grand Rapids City, South Dakota. Their mission statement is setting captives free. And it ties right with their church name, the Ransom. So you can't be there at a service and not know what their mission statement is. It's in the name. They're going to speak it in the service. And so, there's a perfect example of having a simple message. They're consistent about it, and they are persistent. They say no to a lot of stuff if it doesn't meet the mission. So,
we have an example here locally, and Matthew and I have talked about this a lot. Alive Wesleyan Church over in Central. I have had an opportunity to be around their staff. I've actually had an opportunity to teach some students that came out of that church, and as they were hammering away at their mission and their vision, they came up with the number 96,000. And that 96,000 represents the 96,000 people who are unreached in this county. And that has become so clear in why they do what they do that you can't bump into their people without hearing that number. And so everything that they do is run through that grid. So when an idea is brought before the leadership team, the first question out of the gate is, how does that help us get to those 96,000? And if there's not a clear tie, it's rejected. And I get the feeling that's what you're talking about here in terms of just really honing in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're shooting in the dark if you don't have a target even set up. So that mission statement is your target. And so it becomes that filter for everything you do.
And I want to just myself pause and talk here for a second and say, this is very important stuff. I think in a bit our conversation may turn towards the methodology of a little bit more specifics. Some people look at that and forget, you have to have this part nailed down before we get to how do you finesse that? How do you incorporate that into everything that your church does? Some people look at that and they say, well, you're over-marketing the church without realizing the intentional effort that's gone in to the preparation before the marketing of the church. Yeah. So it is wrong to start with the marketing and not have the mission and vision and the methods that you're wanting to use behind that. That really is the place where you and the Lord work on that as a congregation. I've noticed that as I was collecting and gathering resources for the show. One of the things that I did for today's episode was went and I found some of the documents that a lot of churches use that are branding and style guides. And in essence, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take, this is who we are, and we want to make that message very clear across all the things that we do, so that all the things that are being put out from our church fall in line with this and present that over and over and over again in a very clear way. Some people have looked at those kinds of documents and have said, this is just overkill. You're going crazy here on this.
Yeah, so my question for you and for you, Kory, is exactly, so like last night, I looked at that file for the first time, and because I know you, and like this has been a process for me, slowly, okay, I'm getting this, but it has been a process. So how do you respond to others who look at this, especially my generation and older, who say, oh, this is just nitpick?
Kory, you want to start first, or you want me to jump in there on that?
If you got something good, go for it.
Well, it is. I think the answer that I would give is it is. It is nitpicking on stuff, but it's nitpicking with intentionality behind a huge process that's gone on. And you don't start with that nitpicking. You start with that prayer. You start with that trying to discern, trying to work with your people, and all that kind of intentionality until you get, okay, this is what it is. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Then from there on out, it's okay to be very clear and very specific with what we're trying to do, because for other people looking in, the easiest way for them to become, I don't know what the proper word to use is, infected by what we're trying to present is to be clear. And if they're getting different things from different places, that distracts from being able to easily identify this is what we're about and this is what the Lord has called us to. So why distract when we can present a clear message? Yeah.
Would you add anything to that, Kory? I mean, if someone said, man, this is just nitpicking, I mean, what would you add to that?
I think Matt really nailed it when the whole conversation begins around prayer and really trying to nail down who you are and what your mission is. And out of that comes this ability to communicate clearly. I mean, just ask any pastor about the prep of his sermon.
Yeah.
He's putting a lot of work and time into that in prayer, hopefully, so that he can communicate clearly what God has given to him. So on an even larger, grander level, like, how are you doing that consistently every day, not just from the pulpit?
Very good. Yeah.
And I realize there are some generational things here. I know a pastor who critiqued me and others one time saying, you should be able to just get up in the pulpit and preach as the Spirit leads. And I've heard that same pastor preach. And it's buckshot.
Not what you prefer.
It's buckshot. I didn't know where you were going there for a moment.
No, I wasn't gonna go quite to that extreme. But Dr. Black, in homiletics class, used this illustration. He's like, you either get into the pulpit with a shotgun or you get in there with a rifle, and you either shoot.
Well, that explains my lack of success.
And it explains this country's new attention to gun control laws. But anyways,
is a cannon ever appropriate?
You get up there with a shotgun, and you're just kind of getting little bits of pieces, and they're not making a huge impact in anything. It's just a little impact on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Or you get up there with a rifle, and you make an impact on one thing in a way that is massive and that moves it. And so I feel like, in a sense, this is the same thing. Once you've got that, you can't be, particularly once your church begins to get to a point where you've got a team of people on board, you can't be all over everywhere. Your team's got to have a specific intentionality to say this is what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And the way that it works out is fascinating too, but I think we'll jump into that later.
Let's continue to work through the list here. At one point in our correspondence, you said, be the gospel, relationships over promotion, and invest in people. Now, while I'm interested in you explaining yourself further here, it does seem to me that this is a persistent challenge because of the institutional nature of the church. Many of our rewards are based upon performance, not relationships. So, in this conversation here, I want you to, be specific about, what do you mean by be the gospel, relationships over promotion, and invest in people, but also this broader thing that I think that it becomes a greater challenge when the church is looked at as an institution. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think be the gospel hopefully is self-explanatory for those in the business. It helps prevent mission drift. When your goal is to live and be the gospel, you're living on mission every day. And I would just say that we do that for people. We love God and love people. And that's the tagline of Keith Lloyd's church out at Celebrate.
Yeah.
He and I wish I had actually hadn't said their church name now, because I want to share a story that kind of illustrates. And I know just who they are. He'll be on your show soon. They don't want credit for anything, and so I say that they are humble about this. They love people first. They are set on being the gospel. It's not about a promotional campaign, a sermon series, postcards in the mail, billboards. They don't do that kind of stuff. They try to avoid media. And they have this ministry where they fix people's cars. There's this point in where you're on the edge financially, and if you can't fix your car, you can't get to work, you lose your job, and it's like the tipping point.
Right.
So they've identified that tipping point in their community, and they're reaching out and they're serving people, and they're handing them the keys to a fixed car and saying, "Don't tell anybody. We don't want the media knowing about this. We just, this is for you and you alone." And that changes people's lives. It shows them, I'm loved. This is not out of trying
to get attention. Wow.
And so when they do go or have a connection with the church, they might be invited by a person rather than a postcard. And they have a connection with the church already, and that's far better than, a cold call. So that's what I mean by be the gospel first, above marketing and promotion.
And we're kind of getting into some basic theology here, especially if our understanding, is that, okay, you have creation, you have the fall, and if fall and sin is defined by a broken relationship, which I think it ought to be. So it's broken relationship with God, it's broken relationship with, men and women. Then, one of the things that it seems like you've just honed us right in on is the importance of relationship and establishing those relationships. It's the redemptive and restorative aspects of the gospel of Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, but you also asked the other question.
Yeah, this is a biggie for me. You saw in the notes I sent you that because I work at the district level, and this is becoming a source of frustration for me because, and this is not. Now let me just say this: this is not a negative thing against our district. I'm an assistant DS, and it's not a negative thing against our denomination. That's not at all. My thing is, how can we begin to value those things that we say are important, like spiritual formation? Because at the end of the day, when pastors come to district conference, there are basically three questions that we're asking you on your annual service report. How many were in the seats? Did you pay your budget? And are you morally clean? And so while we say spiritual formation is important and relationships with your colleagues are important, we have no metric for that in terms of measurement, nor is that really promoted.
Yeah.
Give it. Go ahead. Give us the definitive. Kory, I'm just interested in just your whole take on that and your opinions on it.
Well, fortunately, I don't have to fill out those reports. Not being in a church leadership role like that. But I would say there's certainly value in the metrics that they do collect, just to establish the health of the church, that baseline. But, arguably more important are those formation metrics, which are incredibly hard to get a pulse on sometimes.
Yeah.
I would just say that I think part of the issue is our perception of reward. We're rewarded when we have more seats filled. We're rewarded when we have more money coming in. Yeah. Forget the organization altogether. Where's the reward in helping that single mom be able to have a car to get to work, loving her, inviting her to church, trying to be in her life, those are the change. If we can change our perception of what reward is, then the numbers will take care of themselves.
Yeah, no, it's good. You're right, and there has to be just a shift in emphasis to things like that.
This is all refreshing. Kory, another thing you say is be honest. Get the right people on stage. What do you mean by that?
This is a tough one because I don't want to get anybody fired.
Hey, listen, Kory, be honest about this.
Yeah.
Did they call you on here to fire me from the show? Is that what this is about?
Not at all. No. Yeah. I think we have to really be honest and ask the question: how well are we communicating?
Right.
How well are we achieving our mission? And sometimes that's it's more than just who's on stage. It's all five senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. What are the things that we're doing in ministry to communicate, and how well are we doing at it? So, the first challenge is asking for feedback. That's scary.
Right. Yeah. Especially for pastors, Kory, because it turns into our profession. It gets to us very personally, especially if we're not really getting the job done. If all information is coming back and it's not getting done, it becomes personally threatening to pastors.
Okay, but let me push through just a little bit.
Sure.
In many churches, if you were to ask for feedback, they would say, "Well, I don't like that music, and I don't like," and what would be is an inward focus rather than an outward focus. What would you do in such cases that?
Who you asking?
What would you do?
I'm talking to Kory. I'm presuming that.
Well, what's the refined question?
You were talking about feedback, the need for ask for feedback, get feedback. But what if that feedback, instead of saying, okay, I'm distracted because bulbs are burnt out and piano needs to be tuned or something like that. Instead of that, it is, we're not a church about me anymore, and I don't like that. Yeah. Then what are you going to use the data to do? You're going to use that, I suppose, to address health issues of the church. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, if that becomes the primary focus out of getting some feedback, then yeah, you can address the light bulbs and the things like that. But there's a spiritual formation issue there,
right?
In the people, and that's good too. Like to capture the spiritual temperature of your people and to know areas that you can work on. Mm-hmm. It's difficult because it's relational. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love the last thing you have here in your list. Intentionality, eat less, move more, batteries not included, and leadership required. Well, we could take that in a lot of different directions. Why don't you unpack that for us a little bit?
They'll do my best.
Yeah.
Well, intentionality. The reason I said eat less, move more, I'm learning this the hard way. If I want to lose weight, those are the two things I have to do.
Yeah.
And I have to do it consistently. And that's in an organizational setting, it becomes far more challenging than I make a personal decision to do this and that. You're having to influence people to do it. And so the only way that I've seen that it really works is to say it every day. Like get up in the pulpit on Wednesday night, on your website, emails. What's your mission? You better say that every time you talk to somebody. Just reminding people about what it is we are here to do. And that's what I mean by intentionality.
Yeah, and that has to be more than just. I know that it starts with the leader, but I mean, at some point here, this has got to get into some key leaders in the church as well, right?
Absolutely.
And I'd go so far as to say it's got to become the DNA of the church. I mean, then it gets from the key leaders. Now it works its way into, like, once you're there, it becomes a part of who you are as a congregant at.
Yeah, and now it's my point. I mean, it's got to. So it's not effective if the leader is the only one hammering it out. It's got to be instilled with other leaders in the church, and then that begins to filter down to everybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they say it's like 16 times to create a habit, and it's probably far more than that, given our culture of how inundated we are with stuff. So,
Kory, let me ask you real quick. Do you have any idea? So let's say a church was starting from ground zero and really wanted to change their DNA and really hone that. Any matrix or any data that you have that says how long of a process that is? I mean, we talking months? We talking years?
Oh man, no, I don't have any data. I know that to really do it well and to really give it prayerful thought and move through it, the best case scenarios that I've worked through have been like 3 to 4 months
Okay.
of moving through that, asking the questions of who we are, where are we going, then refining that down to a simplified message that you can be consistent and persistent with.
Yeah.
But for some places, it can take over a year to really just kind of get to that point of saying this is who we are and how we're going to speak and communicate. And then it takes longer to actually make it the DNA.
And I'm not sure that you could even say that it's a model for all churches fall into the same line. I have a feeling it's a lot different for the established 120-year-old church than it is for the church plant. I mean, when you're going in with the church plant, you're starting with that. You can
start with that DNA.
You get to build that, and so as people are in, they're automatically picking that up if you're doing it right. Whereas in an established church, if you're trying to reform that, it's work because you've already have that people, right? And you've got to wrestle with that history and that legacy along with other stuff. And I mean that's a challenge that I had a conversation with our youth leaders just recently on stuff like that, saying there's issues with a legacy in the church as you're trying to adopt new concepts or new strategies that it's tough to overcome those kinds of things.
Yeah. Anything else you'd add there under intentionality, Kory?
There's a quote, I'm sure you've all heard it, by St. Francis of Assisi, preach the gospel at all times and when necessary use words.
Yeah.
And that always reminds me, even in my profession, just what am I really about? I'm not about making pictures, not about making websites.
Wow.
It's about sharing the gospel. So that's just a piece of intentionality of always going back to the mission.
Yeah, very good. So. All right, before we let you go, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
You can find some old work at korypence.com, and hopefully you'll be seeing some new work at Wesleyan.org in the future here.
And are you do you do outside consulting?
I do. If you check out korypence.com, that you can kind of see some of the work that I've done.
Very good.
So yeah, one of the exciting things that I've been working on is The Well, which is a church plant in New Zealand. And we've gone through this whole process that we've talked about today, and you can kind of see from beginning to end.
Yeah, so
if you ever need someone to travel with you to do on-site work there, and you don't mind somebody who would come dressed in their full Hobbit gear with the big furry feet, so I can tromp around the backwoods for a couple. Just let me know, okay?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be burning up the phone lines. So real quick, Kory, I would say you've worked with this church in New Zealand. So what's been the time frame on that?
Yeah, it was 6 months of working through the vision and mission.
Okay.
And really refining how we were going to communicate that. We got the graphics done, and then it just becomes a matter of putting it into all these different touch points that they're going to be using, and it's still evolving. I'm actually trying to plan a trip over there right now to be there. Yeah,
like I said.
It's tough, I know.
Plan it in secret, or TG will be along, I'm sure.
But they're getting ready to launch in February, so It's been exciting to be with them this last year.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
See that happen.
So when you started that process, did it start one-on-one with the pastor, or were you automatically brought into a leadership team setting?
It was with the pastor, and he had pulled together a very small team, and Clint Usher is the guy's name, and he's a great thinker, so he made all my work very easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. And we'll be glad to just recommend people check out your website and give you a call for services. Again, thanks so much, Kory, for being with us today, and just blessings upon you and all the great work you're doing at headquarters.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
As we get ready to transition out, I want to thank Joshua Gomez for sending me the work that he did from Sandy Lake, their style guide. We were talking about how It's used to communicate things. I'm going to have it in the show notes for you to download.
That, yeah.
I'll link to some others from some other churches, but just as an example of some of the things as they try to communicate what they're about.
Sure.
They even give specific names for their facilities. Say, when we refer to these places, this is what we call them, just to keep the message clear. So here's an example: a worship folder, and then in parentheses it says "not bulletin." Like, we just want to refer to that. Go be sure you pick up a worship folder, and there's intentionality behind that because of what they're trying to say. I like this one. When we talk about the offering, we always ask that the ushers come to receive the offering, not to come take the offering.
Right, yeah.
And it's just the wording there. Not that we're not that we're pulling money out of your pocket, but that we're receiving what you're giving. Their facilities, they call, let's see,
the different services. Was that the one that was intentional about what they call the service? Like, so the Sunday morning was.
I'm looking for it right now. Yeah, it's in here, and I'm just not.
So,
I'm
like,
just
they
not
didn't
seeing
call
it.
it the Sunday morning service. It was like, this is the and.
Oh yeah, where is it? It's in here somewhere. But yes, absolutely. They give it a specific.
I just don't remember what it was, our worship time or something like that. But they were consistent with the language on that. So once you got into the DNA of that church, I mean, when that was said, you understood that Sunday morning. That's when we gather together.
Celebration.
Yeah,
And then all their subgroups off of that. Yeah, their men's ministry. We don't call it a men's ministry. This is the name for that, to just give it. And slowly, I guess as you have a group of people who are intentional about using this kind of language, that begins to be adopted and picked up, and it makes its way in. And it's not a matter of trying to make it confusing for the new person who comes. I think that if everybody's communicating the same message, it's easy to grasp and understand why these things are this way, and what we mean when we say a worship folder. Yeah, very interesting stuff. So that'll be on the website to download from us, and thank you to him for sending that to us. Other things, I may link to some other resources. I found stuff from denominations, 2 different denominations, a Lutheran sub-denomination and the Foursquare Church.
And you have like a whole folder.
Yeah, they're
things, man.
they're just intentional. This is our branding. This is how we want to speak and communicate. We want to be consistent in these things, and everything from that to a very local New Spring Church. They have a communication guide that just gets down into the simple thing, like how you can set up email signatures inside of your email. Say, this is kind of how we want you to format that. If you're on staff here at the church, this is what it should look like, just that it stays consistent across the board, and speaks the same language no matter who's speaking. Yeah. Very, very interesting.
All right, listen, we are going to do a book giveaway right here. Pop goes to church. We had Tim Stevens on, I don't know, last fall or maybe late summer, and he was good enough to send us a few copies, and every so often we pull one off the shelf, and so today we're going to do that. What do they need to do, Master TG?
Yeah, it'll be at the website later on today under the giveaways tab, and it'll just be a standard way to get in and enter your name to win a copy of that book.
All right, and you and I didn't talk. When gonna give it away next week, or let it go?
Let's
give
it 2 weeks. Yeah,
2
because I don't
weeks.
think we have another giveaway to cover. So we'll give it a couple of weeks.
All righty, well, let's move on to
Download of the week.
We've got some good ones for you for this week.
all right. Yeah, this is all you, Teach.
Yeah, lots of different options. So this is technology that has been around for a while, but something that I've just kind of really desired to incorporate into my life, and that is OCRing a document, optical character recognition, I believe is what that stands for. Yeah. Let me see if I can look up I don't have my show notes opened, but I've got a list here of different Macintosh and Windows applications that can be used. So I found one, this is kind of what got the ball rolling, called PDF Scanner. It's a Mac application in the App Store. It's interesting because it's not just an OCRing application. It can do that, but if you have a a document scanner that doesn't duplex, so it only scans one side at a time. It does what's called faux duplexing, where you run all the papers through, and then you take the stack and put it back in, and it puts them in the right order based off of the back side of the page. So that's pretty nice and handy. I mean, it's really great when you have a duplexing scanner that can get front and back at the same time. But mine currently at home does not do that. The one at the church does. So this way, like if I had 2 pages, each had a back side, I'd start with the front. It would scan page 1 and page 3. And as they come out, they'd sit there then in the tray. But what would be on the top is page 4. And so you'd put them back in the tray, and it would scan page 4 and page 2. And it automatically sets those in there and then turns them into one document. So it's pretty handy in that regard. But then it also does character recognition and can turn that into stuff. So, for example, this is something that like on our district journal isn't optical character recognized. So that means you can't search it. It's been scanned, but it's just images on this page. I've run that through there. So now if I'm looking up information, I can do a word search and it'll actually pull that up.
Does that mean now you can copy and paste from that?
Yep. So there's that for Mac. Now I got a bit to talk about here on this. Then there's Windows. I have not tried this application, but a Windows alternative. It's a free application. PDF scanner is $15.
All right.
This free OCR is, as the name kind of hints you to, is free. This is based off of Hewlett-Packard's work on the Tesseract project, which I love that name. It's in some science fiction somewhere, Tesseract, but it's a great name. Google bought that and has open sourced it. So this program isn't Google's program, but it's based off of that engine that is an open source engine that's been built for that. If you go to the source code, there's just a straight up Tesseract program. I've not tested it or played with it. Okay. And if you want to compile for Linux, you can compile the Tesseract engine into Linux and into OS 10 and all that kind of stuff, but I haven't given that a stab. Right. And I don't know. I can't speak for how well it works.
Sure.
Then an application that works for both Windows and Macintosh but is $100 is Abby Find Reader. So here's my experience. I ran the same document, a newsletter from one of our missions families, the Geels, through PDF scanner and through Abby Find Reader to do OCR on this document and see how it would compare. Abby Find Reader got everything perfect. I took a whole, and I shouldn't say everything. I took a paragraph that was 119 words. Of those 119 words, it had the entire paragraph formatted correctly that I was able to select out of a document. Every word, there was the proper line breaking, proper punctuation. It had it all. And that was great, but that's a $100 program if you're going to be using that. PDF Scanner, the $15 program, I ran it through. There were, I think, 5 formatting mistakes. So it had bunched some words together and had an inappropriate line break. And then it was having a hard time distinguishing lowercase L's from capital I's. And so in a lot of words that started with a lowercase L, it had put a capital I there in that spot and caused, where if you were trying to search for that word, well, now it's not there if you're doing that search. So for what I equated to being 15% of the cost, you get 80% of the accuracy of Abby Find Reader. Abby Find Reader will do it, and it just, the results came out better from that, but it's more expensive. Now, I haven't tried this yet, but just today as I was preparing, found out Abby Find Reader has a cloud application. You can upload a 30 megabyte document, that's the limit on size, to Abby Find Reader, and they'll OCR it in the cloud. And
what
you
does
get
that cost?
document. It's free. So that's their service done for free, but it has a limit on the file size.
Right.
Some PDFs, when they get big,
if you're on
a
Linux computer, then
that's a great option.
Yeah.
And there's even a thing in there where as you're doing that, as you upload your document, you can set it to email you when the OCRing's done, and they'll just have the download link right in the email to get that document back. So it's not as easy and right up there. Each one of these things does things a little bit differently. They're not one and the same, like PDF Scanner with that faux duplexing. It has tools and capabilities that some of the others don't, but each one's great. Evernote OCRs, if you have Evernote Professional, if you pay for Evernote, you can throw a document in there, and they're constantly taking your documents and OCRing them as they sit in Evernote if you're paying for it. But it's a paid subscription service.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of options, but this is what I've found. It's going to change my life, especially when it comes to DBA packets that I can't search through. I'm sitting there like, oh, this is so frustrating. Now I can go and I can find the specific
and then you can
thing.
send it to me once you OCR.
Yes, absolutely. For a fee.
And,
That's
and
right.
listen, now one of our listeners could do us a favor if someone would try the free OCR. Just let us know.
Yeah, both that. If somebody gets a chance to do that, try this,
tried
Abby.
it in the past and was not impressed.
Okay.
Okay.
But that was probably 5 years ago.
Well,
So what I
definitely check it
did
out because
was
Google still has been developing this.
I bought a scanner, and I bought Abby, and I've used it one time, and I'm giving it to Tony. So
Oh yeah, really?
Yay!
Hold on. How can what? I've done all the hard work here. Why is it going to him? You've done nothing.
well, he's going to sell his
Because we had
versions
this
back to
conversation
you.
before today.
So I'm surprised at that. So you did not have a good experience with Abby Fine Reader.
No. I
no,
had
no.
an excellent.
He
It was
tried the free OCR.
Oh.
I tried, and that's why I ended up buying. I bought the best at the time, a couple years ago, the best book scanner. So you don't have to open the book flat. You can do it at a 90-degree angle and scan it. And the software
And
that
I'm
came
gonna-
with it was a.
There are times I actually hire my youngest daughter to do like office stuff for me, my books and
Child
stuff.
labor.
And so, child labor. And so, I'm gonna do this with this to have her do some books to have her scan them so we can get them in digital form.
And $20 bills and what else?
yeah.
Here's the other thing in our chat room again. Yes, correct. Adobe Acrobat if you buy the professional version, but you're talking lots of money. So what I'm trying to do here is provide you ways to OCR a PDF or another document that are
And those are all good.
financially.
The free OCR may be. It certainly is generations removed from the early version that I was trying. And
There is for Adobe. You can get a discount if you're a church on that. And I believe I'm right on this. We were able to get it because the district is a church organization. I went through Dell and bought the Office package, and then bought Adobe because we need that.
you told me you downloaded
in a
that
PC
from a
world.
pirated version.
In a Mac world, you can turn stuff. You can save stuff as PDF. It's
Very
it's
easily,
easy,
it's
but-
built into
Yeah.
the OS through Preview that you can just save right to a PDF.
and
with no
you can
problems.
mark it up and do stuff, which I
Right.
do.
But
yeah.
but yeah, it's a great program. I wish that on the district level we were utilizing it a hair better. In fact, you want to take that call and then let and tell them about
Right.
what
And
we've
my
done.
illustrious DS is calling. He knows we do this every Tuesday, but he'll tell me he forgot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very
Anyway,
good.
so all that's done. What's next?
All right, it's time for They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
I think there's a general feeling that there are already enough churches. In short, if you're going to launch a new church, you have to start with a white-hot, differentiated, compelling vision, or why take up more real estate? Why not just go join one on the corner of Elm and Vine? Half of them are empty these days anyway, so why don't you go take over their property as opposed to starting yet another one? So thinking about that and how to craft that vision would be quite important to me. Bill Hybels, expressing his views on societal changes over the last 40 years, which he believes impacts the way we should approach church planting. Source, toddrhodes.com.
For more than 10 years, the Ivona team has been focused on creating innovative text-to-speech technologies. We're thrilled that Amazon is supporting our growth so that we can continue to innovate and deliver exceptional voice and language support for our customers. Lucas Osowski, CEO and co-founder of Ivona, expressing his pleasure that Amazon has acquired his text-to-speech company. Source, Engadget.
We've shown one mechanism for how adolescent stressors lead to long-term brain dysfunction in adults. We may have a way to overcome such long-term effects biologically, or this may result in a way to intervene in their lifestyle. Akira Sawa, director of the Johns Hopkins Schizophrenia Center, commenting on recent research which seems to suggest that some forms of mental illness may be environmentally based. Source, PBS NewsHour.
It's definitely indicating that the immune system is compromised in some way. It's unable at that time, for whatever reason, in this case loneliness perhaps, to keep that virus under control. Lisa Germka, a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute for Behavioral Medicine Research at Ohio State University College of Medicine, and the lead researcher on a study that links loneliness and compromised health. Source, Live Science.
Before you break all these down, I have discovered where the Tesseract came from in science fiction, and I just want to share that with everyone real quick. The Tesseract was the crown jewel of Odin that in the recent Marvel movies that was stolen. It was in Captain America. It was in Iron Man 2. It was in Thor, and then it was the main.
Let me get that down.
It was the main power source for the weapon in the Avengers that came out. Like, that's where the Tesseract was stuck in my mind.
When it was stolen, that was really a Thor point with him.
It sure was. All right, sorry for distracting. Go.
If they could just bring back vaudeville.
Oh, my Norse gods.
All right. All these stories interest us in one way or another. The Live Science, the last one that I just read, fascinating story about the health risks of loneliness. And my interest in this was the fact that when you're teaching theology, which I'm doing this week, one of the things that we point out is in creation, God made us for relationship, that we exist in community. And in this case, the study that the postdoctoral fellow here is involved in actually has to do with different viruses and those that are lonely. In some of these cases, these viruses progress, or it takes longer for them to heal or get over things. I think all these stories, but at least this one, I'm pretty sure you sent to me.
Doesn't that tie in again with Rodney Stark's findings that people who are, even sick with diseases for which there's no medicine have a multiplied chance of recovery if somebody pays attention to them and takes care of their needs, if they interact with somebody, as opposed to if they're left on their own.
Right. And that's part of what he points out in that book. If someone who is sick can simply have, if there is someone there to hydrate you, in other words, bring you a glass of water. Right. Also, too, here, this study, when you get into it, it also just gets into the benefits of simply the presence of people. So now that goes beyond someone who's giving me a drink, someone who's feeding me, but the presence of people, and that there are healing qualities. Now, my question is this. So if there are people who are consternation...
Are there toxic people? I think we know the answer to this.
That's
toxic people as well as healing people.
Exactly.
And I think that there are.
Exactly.
There are people who make me sick.
The other story you sent that I thought was fascinating is it's a study looking at adults who have depression and schizophrenia, stuff like this, and now there seems to be a link between there may be stressors during the adolescent years in your environment that can affect you biologically.
Now, I wouldn't want to say that that's the whole answer, and the article says that for some cases this is true.
Right.
I would hate to think that poor parent that's struggling with a deeply schizophrenic child has to bear the onus of this all by themselves. But the point is still valid that environmental factors impinge upon our development and may be one explanation for certain kinds of schizophrenic manifestation.
Yeah, that it has. The thing for me was that you would have these stressors that could bring on long-term physiological issues in a person.
Right.
Also, too, I went into the study some, and so I was a little disturbed in the study. Obviously, they're not testing humans, putting humans intentionally. So the way they do this is with rats, and the way they did it was by putting them in water because they're bad swimmers, and plucking them out just before they go under, or just they've gone under, and bringing them back to health. But their point was this, that they were messed up after that.
So when does the Baptist loose in the laboratory?
When do the human trials begin in this study?
And Steve, that's why we brought you in the studio today.
We got a dunk tank out in the backyard.
Okay, so I'm the one that put the Ivona story in because I'm excited about this because I love the whole Kindle environment, and the Kindle HD, the text to speech. That's kind of like Amazon's second generation of this, and it's better.
Yeah.
And I'm excited that they bought this company that's doing this.
I think they should just hire like a call center where when you want the book read, you just dial and then over Skype or something, somebody actually narrates the book.
My grandmother's voice, please.
Well,
Somebody
no,
with
I don't know how you'd
grandmotherly
resurrect your grandma.
then-
I'm talking about just somebody who'd sit there and read it like narrators.
Yeah,
so
but
you
I
call
mean,
up
they could
narrators.
have grandmother types, or if you wanted Perky, you could
There
order
you go.
Perky.
And if you're doing a research project, if they could form the paper for you.
No, I'm excited about this technology. I mean, think about how long it's been around for a while. Think about how long OCR technology has been around that we talked about earlier. Think about Steve Jobs' introduction of that machine that sits back there in the corner of our thing. What's the thing?
Yes.
They took the cover off that machine, and he's like, I forgot something here, but instead of me introducing it, I'm going to let it introduce itself. Take the cover off the machine, and I mean, they were striving for that then. And there's the recording. Hello, I'm the Macintosh. Thank you to and they're trying to get this human speech pattern out of a machine.
Well,
Getting
and I've been
closer.
When our robot overlords kill us, I'd like for them to be able to easily and
Speak.
clearly
That's
explain why they are
never
putting me
happen.
to death.
It will never happen that they'll take over the world. We can outdumb them any day of the week. That's the one thing. We're not logical. Remember Spock on the Star Trek series?
Yeah, just before the robots kill us, I'd like to hear just some good plain English.
Yeah. You are being
y'all.
sentenced to death because
Right,
A, B,
exactly.
C, D.
Yeah, not this, mechanical voice. You are being sent.
Or like
that.
like the old cyborgs out of just delete, or what is that? Isn't that what that's what the Cybermen in Doctor Who say?
Okay, now that we've lost our audience.
All right, the last story here was one about Bill Hybels. You don't get, in the quote that we gave you don't get a good feel for this, but Hybels really gets into the culture here. So how has the culture changed since he was a young man coming into ministry? And I think that he gives some good stuff. I picked out that one quote there because, I mean, he tells us something very painful, and that is, before you run out here and start to plant another church, look at the churches around, look how many are empty, and so what's the rationale, what's the need here?
It's something I've said on this show before. The very last survey done for the Greater Greenville metropolitan area, third from the bottom of that survey, I mean, after convenience stores, after mechanic shops, after industrial places of work, were churches. What do you want in your community? So we are right at the bottom. And I forget what the last two were, but they were like, leper colonies and HIV dispensaries, I mean, not dispensing medicine, but where you would go and be given HIV. Yeah, it was just ridiculous. And this is the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yep.
But we have done it to ourselves. And that's another show.
See, no, you can't say that. You can't say that.
That's another show, another day.
Give me the short answer of how we've done it to ourselves.
Right there in everything Kory has said today and everything Bill Hybels is saying. What is the rationale for one more third full, 2/3 empty church that's not relevant to its community and nobody gets anything from it except they drive by this quiet, sealed up mausoleum.
Right.
Now I'm done.
So, but the issue there in that is it's got to take, those churches have to be able to be reformed. And that is, when you think about the challenge of saying, okay, we could either form and start working on planting something new from the ground up, or fight the battle in some churches that it would be to reform, re-strategize, and rework everything that's been
It toxifies
done.
the environment, though. It's better often just to shut it and reopen it.
Well, I know. So there are
struggles-
methods, but then you've got to get the church that's willing to do that can do that. I mean, if the goal is, okay, I move into a community or I'm here, let's investigate the churches that are here. You got to have then a group where the people that are the core there are willing to be redefined.
Well, what I'm suggesting to you is that you take it back to where it is only doing the missional stuff, and then only the people that are involved and interested in doing the missional stuff will stay.
Yeah.
But when you stay and fight a prolonged battle, it has a tendency to toxify the atmosphere
does.
and the community.
Yes,
and
it does.
It brands you as that church.
Yes, it does.
And that's why you say sometimes a shutting down
Yeah.
and clearing the slate.
And
then
it's not just me saying it.
relaunching.
This is the research.
Yeah.
This is why so many denominations are turning to that, including the Wesleyan Church.
And
Right.
doesn't that take so much more guts? Like in a denomination setting
does.
like we're in,
Yeah.
doesn't that take so much more guts for the leadership in the denomination to say, no, instead of planting a church, we're going to shut down some churches. We're gonna completely redefine this, and this is coming from the top down.
Not for the purpose of displaying our power or what we can do, and not for some trivial denominationally led new program that's going to disappear in 6 months to a year, but for the kingdom business.
Right.
of-
And to say
of
we
winning
have
souls.
churches that are in strategic locations that should be impacting their community in
They should
such
be
a
full
great
every
way.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Full every Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh
And
man.
some of them are
Ooh,
changing.
why did you start this? I told you, don't say anything now.
Don't say anything controversial is what you said.
Oh man.
Listen, if I say good morning, someone who wants to know what's good about it.
Yeah. Well, get into Heibel's article. We kind of went off on a tangent here. One of the things he talks about is your core team. He said that his core team is still with him 37 years later.
Think of that.
And
Man, yeah, no kidding.
yeah, and what happened is they bought into him. I mean, he cast a vision and they bought into it. His core leadership is with him after 37 years, and he talks about the importance for that. And there's no substitute for people who buy the vision, who are in, and they're all in, whether it succeeds or whether it fails.
Chat room comment, may I?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
David Gould on this idea. So he's coming from this idea that as a culture we have perfected the extending of life, and that's seeping its way into how we deal with churches. So here's his statement: District's office treats dying churches with hospice care.
What is he suggesting that, or he's saying that's what they do?
That's what he's saying. He's saying this is how we deal with dying with struggling churches. We treat them with hospice care. We prolong death.
Well, I was going to say, here's what I was going to say. Hospice is about helping someone to die.
Yeah.
So I think so.
But I think it's a good analogy. I think that we ought to bring hospice care, but I mean it in this way.
I'm not sure he intended it that way.
I
think he intended, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, hospice care for us should be how do we put this to death in a very compassionate, helpful way, but not extending.
He's talking about life support.
Yeah,
we got him hooked on the machine.
I think now, David, chime in real quick here if
ahead,
you say
David.
differently. But
I think what Kory mentioned is right, and you mentioned about Foursquare Church and a sub-Lutheran denomination. You said that if the brand is pervasive, then what you do is you go to a church that is not up to the brand, and you try to identify if there are those enough within the church who could carry the brand and who are sold on the brand and who are good exponents of the brand. And you start from there. And if you don't, well, it's not your brand anyhow. It's selling something else. And we don't have time, and life is too short. I'm not saying this in terms of the second coming or something, but we don't have time. At 55 years of age, I want to tell you something. I was 13 years old yesterday. Life moves right out from under you. When I started pastoring, I had all eternity, it seemed, to get stuff done. And now I'm facing the reality that my grandfather Stanley died at 61, my grandfather Williams died at 75, and I'm 55. That's 20 years at the max if I live to be as old as Grandpa Williams. 20 years is no time at all to get done what I want to do.
Yeah, and you don't want to be fiddling around with things that have nothing to do with kingdom
That's
business.
right.
Yeah.
We've got business.
all right, I may have misinterpreted David. So, but it is an interesting sub thought. So
Yeah.
the chat comments. But anyways, and then also chat comment. Chris Sumter also notes that hospice workers would probably object to me saying putting to death part of the analogy. That's probably not how they would define themselves.
Can I say one thing, though? Somebody that we need to maybe for the future, and I'm talking out in the open here, but Kevin Carter and what he's doing up there, the Wesleyan Church just recently highlighted him, and that email was sent around to all of us
I'll look
for
into
what
that.
he's doing at Greensboro area. a graduate of SWU, Wesleyan pastor, and he's got a 16 cents ministry, it's called, because when they did something big for a woman, she wanted to do something back for them, and all she had were 16 cents. So he's networking all kinds of churches together to be the church. That's what we're talking about here.
All right, listen, real quick here. In a couple weeks, we're going to have Steve Corbett on. He is the co-author of When Helping Hurts. Great book. We'll be giving a copy away of that particular book, and we'll talk about it that day and let it run for a week or two. Also, on February 19th, we have Brad Ostendy. He's going to be here from Ready to Focus, going to talk to us about neurofeedback, computer technologies to help people overcome issues related to stress, anxiety, poor concentration. He works with pastors, he works with missionaries, and just a lot of other guests don't have time to get into right now. Let's see here. Giveaway in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks. Pop Goes to Church, Tim Stevens. It kind of goes along with what we've talked about, and engaging culture with the things around us and working that in. It's good stuff.
You can enter as many times as you would like. Brother Steve, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Olsuit, OLSUIT, at twitter.com.
All right, TG.
All right, for me, you can find me at MatthewTG.com. I'm sorry. Try to email that somebody. Email Steve at olsuit@twitter.com and see what happens. I love it.
All right, you can find me at Twitter at AKC64.
This is the Technology Show as it was designed to be, guys, and it's been such a great day to spend time with the original. This is what
the original.
To New Coke. We're going back to Coca-Cola Classic.
Yeah, now, I know you're making fun of me, as if I don't know that you can't email me there. But he asked how to get in touch with me. Well, I put out about one twit. And you're the twit that's going next. I put out about one tweet a week. So
further proving my point. Very fun. All right.
One tweet.
He's just mad that he doesn't get the scanner. That's all it is.
That's what it's bitterness.
He's bitter.
It's bitterness. Hey, if you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all those links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com, and the resources that you're talking about, TG.
Yeah, they'll be there, and I'll do my best. I feel bad just posting other people's resources on our site. I may link to some of those, but I do have permission on the Sandy Lake stuff.
Okay.
Definitely check it out. Very cool document.
If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com or the Twitter. Leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049-THEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play your comments
on
the air.
Book where all the faces are? Our face? Our face?
Face space?
Face.
Facebook?
Face.
Father, forgive them, even though they know precisely what they're doing.
Thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh,
I'll be in the old
goodness.
folks' home next week.
Oh, my goodness. What a great day.
That was beautiful. I've only put out one twit. Put 'em out.